goodness. It is a very sleepy, very foggy Gemini new moon. Let's dream about it. There are some very sleepy vibes this week. There is a slowing happening. There is a fog settling. If you watched my Gemini season forecast, I mentioned that this weekend is the one with all the fog, the one with all the pauses, the one with the 60-hour void of course moon. If you're not familiar, that means the moon is done taking calls and we are drifting, wandering freely for those 60 hours. There's no one in the office, okay? It's a long weekend. We mentioned that what sets the tone for this whole drifting into this deep fog is that Mercury, newly home in Gemini, very happy to be so, is running into Saturn in Pisces on Thursday, leading up to this new moon. Saturn has been in its shadow basically since it entered Pisces back in the first week of March. When it stations retrograde at this new moon on Saturday, it will be going back all the way to 0 degrees of Pisces, and we'll begin this journey all over again. Think about what maybe has been put into place since that time. What sort of responsibilities you've been taking on, what sort of firmness you feel developing in that Pisces house, and get a sense of what you might be backtracking to go over once more, to reframe, revisit, start rebuilding. Whatever work is needed in that area or whatever revision is coming to mind, this is what will be starting when Saturn stations retrograde on Saturday, a few hours before this new moon lunation. Now, since Mercury is ruling this new moon and squaring Saturn on Thursday, that is the vibe that we will be bringing into this lunation. It might feel less new than some of the typical new moons we've been having. It may feel more like a pause to gather more information before we move ahead. This is also because the moon itself will square Saturn and meet Mercury on the way to this new moon degree at 26 degrees. So that information that Mercury receives from that square from Saturn is picked up by the moon and brought into consideration before it meets up with the sun. While the moon is moving through Gemini, it will connect with both Venus and Mars through a sextile, as they're both hanging out in Leo right now, as well as Chiron and Aries. So there's a lot of fire energy being picked up by this moon that's in an air sign in Gemini. If we are mindful, if we are aware and looking out, we might find opportunities to connect with people on a personal level, to activate some sense of personal drive, and to maybe acknowledge some milestone of surpassing some previously held limitation of ourselves. So if we want, if we have the energy, let's frame it that way. If we have the energy, we can keep our eye open for some of those little opportunities that we can take advantage of and make a little bit of headway, even as the larger conversations are slowed down a bit. The final piece to the slowness of this weekend is that both the moon and the sun will be squaring Neptune. Now, the moon squares Neptune as its final act in Gemini before moving into Cancer, and the sun squares Neptune the very next day during this 60-hour void of course. So this is where we are gonna, as much as we are able, need to release kind of the specifics of the information, be willing to invite in some ethereal inspiration, a little bit of magic, a little bit of glamour, and be mindful of the other side of Neptune's coin, which is doubt, uncertainty, paranoia. There's a lot of emotion and a lot of possibility wrapped up in Neptune. And when we square that, it can really just sort of Pandora's box. So we might want to use that 60-hour downtime, whatever it looks like to us, as a period where we just kind of take care of our mental health, our physical health, take a break from any harsh substances, maybe remove yourself from environments that are a bit too stimulating. And that might be hard because here in the States, we're celebrating Father's Day. That might bring up a lot of different things for a lot of different people. So just something to be mindful of. It's a day that is not going to be the most logical, the most rational. We might have a lot of influences impacting us, and we may want to give ourselves some space to just be with what comes up, trying to ground what comes up if we are able, and just giving space to what might feel a bit overwhelming. My last note is that this is the final weekend before Venus's shadow period. We know that Venus will be stationing retrograde in Leo this summer. And so something to keep in mind is that Monday marks the beginning of that shadow period. Things that start to come up around Venus and our Leo house starting Monday will certainly be reflected and revisited in Venus's journey through the underworld this summer. So, all right, lots to be mindful of with no real details whatsoever. Super casual. Let's go ahead and pull some cards and see what we're floating into this weekend.
All right, y'all. It is a brand new cycle for this brand new moon. Let's go ahead and pull some cards. Now, at this new moon, just a refresher on our prompts, we are asking about the cycle that is beginning at this new moon for us. We're asking about what has been cleared away to allow for this new shift that's coming in. We're looking at what this new cycle may look like as it unfolds. And lastly, we are getting a sense of how we can ground our ideas and intentions now. All right, and I think that grounding piece will be extra interesting since we've talked about how we are kind of floating through it right now. So, all right, I think one more. Yeah, that feels right. Okay, let's take a look. Okay. Okay. All right, so a cycle that is beginning for us now. Temperance. Beautiful. Okay. If you've been here before, you may know that we've talked about how temperance correlates with Sagittarius. So we had our Sagittarius full moon just a couple of weeks ago, and we now see everyone lining up on the Gemini side of things. So interesting to see this come to this new cycle, even though we don't really know what we're kind of looking at right now, even though we're sort of moving through the fog. Ultimately, what we're being invited into is a deeper sense of balance. And I always love to say that when we're looking at temperance, we're thinking about how we currently establish access to these four essences, these elements, right? Earth, fire, air, water. What do our connections to each of these look like at this time? A lot of times we will have a lot of earth or maybe a lot of water, but we struggle with the air. Maybe we are burnt out and we don't have access to this fire right now. So we're being invited into a cycle of getting a deeper understanding of where we may be out of balance and beginning that work, beginning to figure out how we can realign ourselves within these four elements here. Okay. What has been cleared away to allow for this shift? Oh my. Beautiful to see the Nine of Swords as something we've released. The Nine of Swords is deep anxiety. It's deep separation from who we are. You can see the moon and the sun here, and those represent, those are the luminaries, right? This represents who we are becoming day by day. This represents our emotions and who we've been in past lives. And so this is how we know ourselves. And within the Nine of Swords, we are at a distance from these things. We are gated off from our essence. You may remember that the traditional Rider-Waite image has a figure in bed with 9 swords above their head. And what this signifies is that our anxiety has really reached a peak. I know that for a lot of us, Gemini season as a whole has been a bit anxious, a bit uncertain, and we may have seen some of these energies peak this month in this Gemini cycle. So fortunately, we've been able to step out of this in some way. Maybe y'all are feeling some of this Venus and Mars both hanging out in Leo energy. And I see many of us sort of shaking off or burning off some residue and figuring out how to show up more as ourselves. So I love this. What this new cycle may look like as it unfolds. Oh my, well, we're just going straight to the king. We're not even taking any baby steps. We're not even, there's no middle of the suit here. There's no checkpoint going on. We're just going straight to the king. And these are very similar themes. I mentioned that this correlates with Sagittarius. The King of Wands has a very Sagittarius energy too. We see fire here on the peak of this mountain, and this fire is connecting to the ether, to space, to the divine. And this mountain serves as a grounding, as a channel for this cosmic blueprint. So my goodness, how this cycle unfolds. Okay, so we're figuring out how to rebalance. And it turns out that as we rebalance, we have the vision. We have access to the vision. The second these wheels start turning, the second this machine starts running back up again, all of a sudden we're ready to play the movie. We're ready to just broadcast the picture. So we've bypassed, well, I shouldn't say bypass. That signifies that we have worked our way around something rather than going through it. I don't want to say bypass. We have acknowledged this anxiety and we have figured out how to release it, or it has been cleared away for us. And so as we realign this framework, magic comes through. We have a vision that we are able to not only bring to fruition, but we can also lead others to their own vision, to their own power and their own blueprint. How we can ground our ideas and intentions now. The Page of Swords, seeking truth. If we are feeling the wheels begin to turn, if we've stepped through the other side of anxiety, of panic, of worst case scenario, of this is out of my control now. If we are downloading the vision and we are able to demonstrate it externally to others to begin to move toward this, then how we ground this is by asking questions. I really enjoy that we're not necessarily the experts when we see the Page of Swords next to it. The king is, yes, I have mastered the passion and the drive and the motivation. Here I am collecting data now. Here I am testing out some of these ideas that are behind these visions. I'm not going to assume that this is the right answer. I'm just going to know that I'm supposed to move in this direction. And if y'all are with me, we can go there together. On the way, let's begin to start an inquiry. Let's begin to investigate our surroundings. Let's seek truth. Let's not make this a static image and move toward it and ignore what comes into our path. Let's make sure that we question things. And that's how we're going to break through some of the limitations that we may perceive on this journey to manifesting this vision. I keep saying vision, and I'm sorry. It's just that's what's happening here. Like, that's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm seeing. There's some sort of calling within us that becomes possible now. And we are asked to be curious. Don't think that what you've got right now in front of you is the end all be all. Don't limit yourself to the initial, let's call this a draft, okay? I know it's a king, I know it's the final card, I know that we've mastered it, but all masters also know that we are creating drafts all the time, and what we create in reality is hardly ever exactly how we drafted it at the table. So this is curiosity, this is hunger for truth, and it opens us up even further to receiving some more of this cosmic magic. Okay, I am really enjoying this as our Gemini new moon spread. I love that there is a balance here of kind of the mental part of things. We talked about how there wasn't going to be much logic going on here. And so we don't have answers. We're seeking answers. We're asking questions, but we're still guided by something very potent. And it makes a lot of sense. We talked about the squares to Neptune and kind of downloading from the ether. That's kind of what this looks like right here. We are moving into receiving, and from there we are opening up to possibilities. Okay, y'all, stay safe this Gemini new moon. Take it easy where you are able. Try to allow more information to come in before we react to things at face value, because I have a feeling that nothing is what it seems in this moment. So ask questions. All right. I will see y'all next week for our next forecast. All right. If you enjoyed this, please like it, please share it, please subscribe, and I will see you soon.